Guys, today we're going to be talking about Vex Mythoclast. Now, I know, many of you are probably like, Cross, why would I use Vex Mythoclast inside of PvE? A, it takes up my exotic slot, and if I wanted to use a linear, I would just use Arbalest, which has anti-barrier capabilities. Let me just say, guys, after we go over all the numbers today, you're going to want to use Vex. A massive buff is heading its way next season. And I know Vex Mythoclast has had multiple changes, some, like the 390 to 360 nerf, that I didn't really care about, but this weapon will be shredding next season. Now, before we talk updates, I need us to briefly just touch on why this weapon is so good. This gun has its own gameplay loop. Essentially, you get kills, you chain damage buffs, then you turn the weapon into a linear fusion, which once you activate, you have 3 shots, which by the way, has crazy stickiness inside of PvP. Side note, Vex Mythoclast is probably going to be extremely potent in checkmates. But inside of PvE, those 3 shots, they do some pretty big damage, especially for a primary weapon. And we have primary weapons that also serve like a similar role. Think like Revision Zero. It goes from a pulse rifle to a sniper rifle. But Revision Zero is terrible when it comes to clearing out ads. And I know it's getting buffed and changes too. We're going to be talking about that another time. But what Vex has over Revision is that it is a good ad clearing weapon. Now, to give you a list of everything that's occurred with Vex Mythoclast pretty much over the past season, with the launch of Season of the Witch, Vex Mythoclast had its rounds per minute reduced from 390 to 360. Essentially, Bungie stated they wanted it to match other high-impact auto rifles. They were concerned with Vex Mythoclast being too strong. But they also increased damage against minor combatants, specifically red bars, and major combatants, those being orange bars, by 25%. Now, it was a nice buff. And yes, this also applied to the linear fusion rifle form of Vex Mythoclast. Now, in our original review of Vex Mythoclast, after this change, we felt like even though it was nice doing more damage, I mean, 25% is nothing to sneeze at, considering that this weapon is already an exotic and it's already doing that 40% more damage against red bars. However, there is another primary weapon that has the ability to clear ads and the ability to shred high health targets, that being Quicksilver Storm. A similar playstyle, but I would say Quicksilver is even easier to get those grenade launcher shots as it doesn't require kills. This is why Bungie is going to be delivering us this change in Season 23. Posted in the blog post just the other week, the upcoming changes to Vex Mythoclast read: increased damage versus minor red bar combatants by 10%. Increased damage versus bosses by 25%. Again, just a second ago, that 25% buff only applied to minors and majors. Did not apply to bosses. Now here's the big one. Increasing damage versus champions by 200% when in the linear fusion rifle mode. Guys, that's wild. Very rarely in Destiny's lifetime have we ever seen a buff as high as 200%. Matter of fact, I don't think we've ever seen that. And it's almost like Bungie heard us there when we said that Vex Mythoclast, although it has more ease of use than I would say Revision Zero, still lacked behind the ease of use that Quicksilver Storm has. So Bungie's reply? Here's a hell of a lot of damage. Now, from Bungie directly here, quotes, although Vex Mythoclast received both a range buff and a PvE damage buff in Season of the Witch, we believe it has additional room to grow in PvE and find a unique role. We've increased damage against minor and boss combatants and are going to be experimenting with a different style of anti-champion gameplay. Instead of having an intrinsic anti-champion perk, we are massively increasing the damage that the linear fusion rifle mode deals to all champions. This places it in the unique space of being more of a Swiss Army knife and less of a specialist. We envision it as a weapon that you can take into an activity regardless of which champion type is present and still have it be an effective tool, especially when it's utilized in concert with other anti-champion abilities. AKA, guys, this thing is going to be doing so much damage that depending on the level of content you're in, you're just going to be able to shred the champion down. Vex Mythoclast, which was already, in my opinion, a great weapon, is about to be an absolute banger. Now let's talk numbers, because that's going to tell us everything. Inside of a Legend Lost sector, against an unstoppable champion that isn't stunned, we deal 11,265 damage with 1 shot, and then stunning the champion and shooting, we deal 37,548 damage. Now we can see here that this is a pretty good chunk of their health bar. Now keep in mind, this is in a Legend Lost sector. We also have Solar Surge. So to fairly compare things, we take away that surge buff of 25%, which gives us an unstunned damage value of 9,012 and a stun damage value of 30,038. Now when we calculate the 200% buff that Vex Mythoclast is getting next season, this is when you see the damage numbers astronomically jump. Unstunned damage starting next season will be 27,036 damage. And against stun champions, that will be 90,000 115 damage. Fellas, that's impressive. That is a hefty amount of damage. Just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at here, because context is extremely important when we compare it to other weapons, especially other weapons that have alternate firing modes. Revision 0, which has the ability to turn essentially into a sniper rifle with Vorpal, currently hits for 37,375 damage. Now keep in mind, that's getting a nice buff next season as well. Pull from the weapon post from Bungie. As a second part of our anti-champion experiment, we are also increasing Revision 0 damage versus champions, although by a much lower amount since the weapon retains its intrinsic anti-barrier. So they're increasing damage versus champions by 100%. Now we're assuming this is going to roll over into the sniper rifle, and if we were to walk that math forward, we would hit somewhere around 74,750 damage. Now the other thing that I'm actually curious about, does the base sniper rifle buff, which is going to be a flat PvE buff by 15%, will that also apply to Revision 0? I'm still awaiting confirmation. Regardless though, this gives you an understanding of what we're looking at in terms of damage. Yes, 75,000 on Revision 0 is very impressive once it gets buffed, but Vex Mythoclast still punches way above that at 90,115 damage. Some other points of references though. Quicksilver Storm and its grenades, which does a hefty amount of damage, and it has the ease of use, and the mini rockets, those grenades hit for 41,638 damage. It's still good, but we're talking almost a third of what you can accomplish with Vex Mythoclast. Even Arbalest, which is an incredibly popular option when it comes to dealing with barrier champions, does 24,447 damage, which is almost a quarter of what Vex Mythoclast will be doing next season. Now we should also compare it to our heavy linear fusion rifles. A Vorpal Threaded Needle hits against barrier champions for 37,792. Our bait and switch Cataclysmic hits for 46,380, and our exotic Sleeper Simulant hits for 69,472 damage. Vex Mythoclast will be hitting for 90,115 damage. So technically speaking, Vex Mythoclast in its linear fusion form, yes, it has the highest linear damage in the game. And again, guys, there are so many ways to amplify Vex Mythoclast. The fact that its catalyst grants a weapon damage bonus simply for getting final blows. It also does things like improve accuracy and stability, but that will also transfer to the linear form of this weapon. And if you're combining it with certain solar builds, especially builds that lean heavily into Radiant, and then slap on an exotic like Path of Burning Steps, now you see here, guys, just how nasty this weapon is going to be. Now I'm going to leave you with one final bit of information. We have a very long season coming. Next season will be the longest season ever in Destiny history. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because previously we had another very long season. Ironically, it was called Season of the Loss. Next season will be even longer than that season. But there was a few things that season that really spiced things up, that still kept me interested despite it being such a long season. That was the mod Particle Deconstruction. Now listen, I don't want to get your hopes up, especially since artifact mods for the most part have been dialed back all year long. Bungie has really been stepping away from having super amped up artifacts, with this season probably having the weakest lineup. But what if Particle Deconstruction is actually going to be present next season in tandem with Vex Mythoclast getting hefty buffs across the board? Fellas, we're talking 40% more damage for both fusion rifles and linear fusions. The timing here to bring this mod back seems too perfect. And I know everyone's gonna be like, but Cross, wouldn't that break the balance? Guys, we're about to be in a 7-month long season. Fellas, we're gonna need some spice, and crazy powerful builds is that spice. So guys, that is our Vex Mythoclast breakdown for what's coming and what the damage numbers are looking like next season. Even without something like Particle Deconstruction, Vex Mythoclast is still gonna be an incredible weapon, both in its ad clearing capabilities and now its champion shredding abilities. By the way, if you're interested in getting this exotic and its catalyst, we will link our own guide down below. Feel free to check that out. I know the catalyst is kind of annoying, but next season, it'll be worth it. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.